the fact that we keep having the same issue over and over again in this country is disgusting. The fact
Yeah.
that we witness so many mass school shootings, not even just school, but mass shootings in general, is disgusting. And this is coming from the same people that also consider themselves to be pro-life.
Hey, I'm Ashley Jackson, and this is Push the Next Generation, your Gen Z coded guide to power and politics. Today we're decoding Young Hollywood. So this episode will come out the day after our regularly scheduled programming, Mondays for those just joining us. To be 100% transparent, I've still been finding the words to encapsulate this week's events. And while I don't have them all, I know that being in community is important, so here I am. I couldn't bear to put on makeup and fake a smile though, but I know many of you listening are in the same boat, so thank you for your patience and understanding. As promised, each week I'll be giving you news highlights and then we'll get into some fun interviews. As for this week's news, in a stunning turn of events, Donald Trump has secured victory in the 2024 U.S. presidential election, defeating Vice President Kamala Harris. Trump has amassed 295 electoral college votes so far, surpassing the required 270, while Harris has secured 226. This marks Trump's return to the presidency, making him the second president in American history to win back the office after being voted out. Key battleground states, including the former Blue Wall of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, shifted to Trump, echoing his 2016 strategy. In the popular vote, Trump received nearly 73 million votes compared to Harris's 68 million, the largest margin for Republicans since 1988. Gen Z voters showed unexpected trends, with Trump winning first-time voters by 9 points and edging out Harris among men under 30. Economic issues like inflation and rising living costs resonated strongly with younger voters. This election has revealed a complex political landscape with economic concerns and voter disillusionment shaping outcomes across various demographics. Trump's ability to expand his coalition, particularly among Latino voters and young men, proved decisive in his return to the White House. Already, Donald Trump's victory in the 2024 U.S. presidential election has been accompanied by a surge in divisive rhetoric and concerning incidents. In the wake of this outcome, there has been an uptick in racist and sexist rhetoric across the country. Reports of discriminatory texts and campus protests have emerged, reflecting deepening societal divisions. Trump's campaign promises, including mass deportations and ending birthright citizenship, have further intensified these tensions. Trump's legal situation has also become a focal point of controversy. With his return to the presidency, federal criminal cases against him are likely to be dropped, adhering to the long-standing policy against prosecuting sitting presidents. The implementation of Project 2025, a Heritage Foundation initiative aimed at dramatically reducing the size of the federal workforce and implementing conservative policies across government agencies, is expected to play a significant role in shaping Trump's second term. And globally, world leaders and government systems expressed a wide range of responses to the news out of America. Okay. While listeners know where I personally stand on many political issues, I will always aim to give you all nonpartisan news focused on facts. And in this particular instance, I also feel compelled to share that as a young Black woman of color with pre-existing health conditions, with loved ones who are members of every marginalized group imaginable, with a myriad of intersecting identities, this is a very scary time. I simply cannot underscore my fear of what lies ahead. Vice President Kamala Harris's candidacy meant the absolute world to me, and I believe that she and we deserved better. I am really disheartened, and still today I show up with my raw emotions, knowing that we will continue to fight with moral imagination for a world that sees each and every one of us as deserving of dignity, freedom, belonging, safety, and I will continue to arm you all with information as we navigate this next chapter. Now that we're all caught up, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Push the Next Generation, recommend it to a friend, follow on socials at Push the Next Generation Pod, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Okay, now that the begging is over, let's get into it. This week, I'll be speaking with Lexi Underwood, a multi-hyphenate actress and member of Gen Z. She gained widespread recognition for her portrayal of Pearl Warren in the critically acclaimed Hulu series Little Fires Everywhere, which starred Kerry Washington and Reese Witherspoon. Her career began at a young age, including credits in the North American touring company of Disney's The Lion King as young Nala, Showtime as the First Lady in A Cruel Summer, and she's been in lots of shows and movies. In addition to her acting career, Lexi is also a filmmaker and author. She founded her own production company, Ultimate Dreamer Productions, at just 15 years old. She continues to be a prominent figure among Gen Z actors, using her platform to advocate for representation and to tell meaningful stories through her work both in front of and behind the camera. Welcome, Lexi. Disclaimer, this interview was recorded before the U.S. presidential election. Hi, girly pop. This is so fun. Today I am getting to talk to one of my favorite humans, Lexi Underwood, and we're going to get into all of the things Gen Z, entertainment, politics, being 20 somethings in America today,
Of
all of
it.
it. So thank you for coming on, Lex.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. You know, I love you. So I know that this conversation is going to be just like our regular,
Just
usual.
us on FaceTime, basically, and everyone's going to hear us talking. Love that for us. I forgot to also mention, even though I'm probably sure it was at the top, but this is Push the Next Generation. So we're going to get into all the next gen stuff. So I'd like to start out with a little bit more of your entertainment career first, and then we'll pivot into politics. So I would just love to know for you, how do you select acting projects? Like, do you look for roles that align with your political values, or are you like, a job is a job? I mean, we all have our own ways in Hollywood of doing
Yeah.
things. So like,
Yeah.
where does your motivation come for playing characters?
I will say that I am honestly very picky when it comes to the things that I attach myself onto. I believe that us as artists, we have a higher calling or a greater calling than just us, than just, you know, kind of like having a job and getting a paycheck.
Mhm.
So for me, I look at things that I feel like number one, I wish that I would have had when I was younger, those kind of stories,
Mhm.
but also specifically when I look back at my career 50 years from now, I don't want to regret anything. I don't want to
Yeah.
regret attaching or working with someone that maybe doesn't treat others kindly. I don't want
Mhm.
um, portraying a character that isn't in alignment with, um, I think, the representation that I want specifically our community, young Black women, to have.
Mhm.
I just want to be as selective and careful as possible in terms of just making sure that I attach myself onto things that I will feel proud of at the end of the day, that I work with people that make me feel good and that treat me kindly and that treat others kindly. Which it doesn't seem like these are like crazy out of the box like
But
things,
in our business, they really are.
but they are, but they
No,
are.
they really are. Like, discernment is everything, and being able to hold on to that in this business is really, really everything. And it just makes me think too, like, I know for both of us, we're not only interested in acting, we're interested in producing and doing all these other things. And like, I've come to learn that producing is where the real power is in our business. And so like making sure that you have a different level of ownership over your voice and career, I think is really beautiful, that we're coming to see that, like, yeah, we can do it all. We can do all the things. And like, it's important to make sure that we are in charge of our representation from beginning to end, and knowing that, like, when you look up one day, of course there's different mediums, whether the director's cut is the final cut or the producer's cut, which I think it's really all producers now, but like making sure that you know that by the time your product is done, you can trust the team that you're working with to not have your portrayal be completely derailed. Like, so those things, I think it's just, there's so many nuances. But speaking of that, I'd love to know what your current thoughts are on the state of the industry today, particularly regarding diversity and representation.
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
It's like, and scene. It was great talking to you, Lexi.
Talking to you, actually, this was a lovely conversation. No, but I think that, oh, God bless us all. I think that we really have we've it's no secret that we absolutely have seen a change in the industry over the past, I would say, 10 to 15 years in terms
Right.
of the projects that are out there, more specifically in terms of representation for our community. There has been an influx of Black women that are leading ladies that aren't attached to roles or projects that just showcase our trauma. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but with that being said, there are still a lot of those stories out there. And I think that I'm really excited to see this new generation and this new wave of Black artists, Black content creators, even just kind of in terms of what we put out there and taking ownership of our own stories that we want to tell and putting it out there without waiting for other people's permission.
Right.
And so many incredible people that are doing that, like Issa Rae or Lena Waithe, and it's so dope to see that out there. But with that being said, I would also love to see more. I think that there was a time back in the 90s specifically where it's like you turn on TV and you go to any sitcom honestly, we had Living Single, we had a
We
different
had all of the good stuff.
all of the good stuff. And so it's just like, I think in a sense, obviously I'm a very nostalgic person. I'm a nostalgic person for a time that I wasn't even
We never got to even
never
experience.
got to experience it. But I would absolutely love to see kind of a wave of that again. Not
Yeah.
where it's like a reboot of Martin or a reboot of Living Single, but new stories that
Right.
are in alignment with those kind of stories where it's just kind of coming of age. You just see Black people just existing,
Existing.
existing,
No,
and
yeah.
it comes with life. So yeah, I think that there are so many incredible people that are doing that and that are working towards that. And I'm really excited to see what the industry looks like within the next 10 years from now, because I think that we are moving in that direction.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like I often, for me personally, I've struggled a lot with this notion. People are always just saying like, we don't want, to see Black trauma on screen and all these things, which I understand where the sentiment comes from. And I also understand like the emotional labor of being Black in America is like beyond, like literally emotionally, physically, spiritually beyond. But for me, I've always struggled with that because like it's in our history and in those diverse stories that I feel most connected to our people in representation. So it's been an interesting, nuanced conversation because I think that there's actually room for all of it. Not that I'm saying let's go make more trauma porn. Like that's a very different conversation. But like there is room to express trauma and grief. There's room to express joy. There's room to express excitement. Like having, I think we know that Blackness is not a monolith, and so to be able to like be in dialogue and understand that like in other races and in other spaces we get to see it all, and like and for even like Asian Americans to know that like you should be able to exist in all of the different aspects of your culture.
Exactly.
And that's really what I love, that I feel like you and I are really getting into, and a lot of people in our generation are looking to be like, it doesn't have to be one thing. And I think like knowing that when the industry was founded, like when cameras were first invented, like we were enslaved, we were experiencing heinous crimes against humanity, and so like we're late to the party in that regard. And so like we deserve to be able to catch up. We deserve to be able to have a breadth of work so that like maybe your jam is not going to go see the next iteration of Roots and it might be mine. Maybe your jam is going to see that comedy show. Maybe your jam is going to see Black horror films. Like making sure that we can hit all the genre markers in the same way that any other culture would, I think
Yeah.
is really what we need to get into. And I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%. I can't wait for a world in which like we get to see like fantasy
All of
film
the things. Yeah.
people and with Asian Americans, and um there's
Latin
just
Americans, all the things.
so I'm just like thinking there's just so many, a Star Wars type of vibe,
Yeah.
that and
We deserve that world building.
exactly. So I'm excited to see it.
Yes, love this for us. Okay, pivoting a little bit. Two things here. What challenges have you faced as a young actress, a young Black actress in the entertainment industry? But with that, I know that one of the challenges that we all face is hair. So hair and makeup specifically, we've had some times as a collective. And so I know that the Crown Act. I just spoke with Sydney Comlager Dove about that, Congresswoman, and so like they're grateful for the work that she's done there, and like figuring out like knowing that that was a big issue and seeing what's happened there in terms of politics and how it shifted. Like, are there other issues that you look at and you're like, yeah, I wish I didn't have to go through that, but I would love to make this better for the next generation of young Black actresses type thing?
Yeah. Interesting. I think, well, for me, I must say that I've been very fortunate, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
sets that I've been on. I have worked with people, specifically Black women, that have been huge advocates for
Mm-hmm.
themselves, which has motivated me and inspired me to use my voice even more on sets, but also that have just like set the standard and the tone for the
Yeah.
treatment that everyone should receive on set.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me personally, I haven't really walked away from too many sets feeling not seen, not heard, disrespected as a Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
as an artist in general. I will say that I have had my fair share of hair and makeup stories when I was younger.
Yeah.
For sure, I definitely did my own makeup sometimes. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
doing my own hair. And I think more specifically for me, kind of maybe for me, what that did was kind of shake my confidence a little bit, which is, I think that we talk about it a lot about,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, we've done our hair and makeup, but we also don't talk about how much that kind of also makes you feel less confident.
And you're at work and a job where you have to be seen. Like it's
Yeah,
not
it's
like the
not,
levels of which it's a problem. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not even just like the 60 people that are in front of you or 100
Mm-mm.
people that are in front of you are going to see it. Thousands of people could see this.
We've seen tweets about bad wigs all the time. We've seen like this is yeah,
Yeah,
and you don't want for your life's work and the thing that brings you joy and makes you feel purpose and passion to be the thing that like everyone is roasting simply because the infrastructure is not there to support you.
100%. Yeah, so that's been a big thing. Then I would also maybe say that there is in this industry, more specifically when it comes to us, I think that we sometimes get into this space where we believe that there can only be one. I don't know if that's a
Mhm.
thing or just a community thing as well, because it happens in other spaces. But I would say more specifically in terms of the industry, it's like it feels sometimes like there can only be one of us that wins.
Mhm.
And so as a young when I was younger, more specifically, navigating through that because I am a person that loves to see everybody win. I love to root for everybody. And so when I would walk into spaces kind of expecting that in return,
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily always reciprocated or given. And I think that also just when you're on sets and stuff, regardless of the race of the other person, it just can be in general. There's always a competitive nature in this industry that exists regardless.
Yeah.
But I think more specifically, it just kind of gets to the point where it's very true. Our community sometimes thinks that there can only be one of us,
Yeah.
or there are people that are on sets or behind the scenes that trick other people into making them think that they can be the only one.
Yeah.
And
That
so there,
scarcity mindset is crazy. Yeah.
but it's
Been there.
it's heavy in this industry.
Yeah.
It's really disheartening to see, especially like I said, when I'm somebody that likes to root for everyone and that believes that what's for you is for you. And so
Mhm.
for me, I just to anybody, any young girl that's coming up after me, I always make it a point where I'm like, I'm gonna clap for you, I'm gonna support you, I'm whatever you need, I'm here. Because I know what it was like coming into that space and not necessarily to have been given that energy and how that
Yeah.
made me feel. So yeah, all in all, I'm like, let's leave all the competitiveness and all
It's
that.
not cute. It's not demure. Like we don't need it.
Well, it's not demure. Let's just drop it and support one another and clap for one another. Seems easy,
Absolutely.
but
Very much so. And I think like beyond us having like powerful moms as like women as moms, I would say I was like they're just powerful moms, but yes, powerful women as moms, and like I think that that also plays a big thing in this conversation. But like also the mentors that you get too. Like you have Carrie, I have Uzo. Like there's so many women that I feel like pour into us in ways that allow us to pour into others. And so like making sure that like we're continuing to cultivate that support system for the people coming under us, I think is so vastly important, no matter what industry, but especially in ours where like everyone's judging you every 2 seconds. So
they are.
like you can't get a job without being judged. Like it's like part of the
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, 100%. Okay, so we're going to pivot now into a little bit more political stuff, but I'd love to know how you balance your career with your political activism because y'all know Lexi's online. She's on the internet saying what she believes in, which is important, but like how do you navigate the responsibilities of that role with your career?
Well, I just believe that if you've been given a platform, that you should do something with it. Not everybody is blessed to have a platform that reaches out to as many people as mine does or as yours does. And so that I think that if we have eyes on us, it's kind of our job and our duty in a sense to speak up about things that we are passionate about. More specifically, I understand that everybody is not into politics and just kind of wants to do their own thing, and that's totally
Mhm.
fine as well. But for me specifically, in terms of speaking more on this upcoming election, and I think also just the causes that I've supported in the past, so like speaking up for Black Lives Matter, obviously reproductive rights, gun control, all those things. Those are things that affect our communities on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
And it's hard sometimes when you're hearing stories from people that are actively going through these things that may not necessarily have the resources, or also where they aren't being heard or listened to in a way in which maybe if I post about it, or if you post about it, or if Carrie posts about it, then people will start to tap in. And so I think that it's just like, it's not as deep as I maybe would like for it to be. I think it's just a humanity aspect of it. Like, I feel deeply about these causes. I grew up in DC. My mother is a very outspoken person. I am in a household where CNN and MSNBC is playing all the time. So I am getting I'm tapped in. And so I think for me, it's just like a knee-jerk reaction. If I hear something that I'm passionate about, I'm going to take it to social media. Or also, I'm going to donate, or I'm going to see if I can speak at this rally or be a part of this conference to lend my voice to help amplify the cause even more. So I think it just honestly goes down to humanity. Like, it's kind of how I feel, and anybody that doesn't like it, oh well.
Very much giving oh well tea. No, I think everything you've said is so magnificent, and I really wish that more people in our industry and in the world would listen to this type of. I feel like it really should be this simple. You have a platform, you use it for good. You've been gifted this platform. And people often say, I think, like, oh, like I didn't like I'm not a role model. I'm not this. Like I really struggle with that sometimes, because I also get it, right? Like, there's a lot of things that come with this job that we did not sign up for. Frankly, like, you may know that it's a part of the job, but you didn't sign up for your privacy to be taken. Like, there's things that you don't sign up for. But in this case, like, I book a show, I now have a platform. I do this, I now have a platform. Like, that just is a part of the exchange between talent and fans that, like, we just know. And so, like, making sure that you are cognizant of that and using your platform to benefit people and not harm others, I think is really, really important. So I'm grateful for all that you do. And actually, I feel like I don't even need to ask about how you handle pushback and criticism, because you said it. Oh, well.
Yeah, it's oh well. Like, honestly, that I had posted something a couple of days ago, and it's very interesting about what you're saying as well, because I do want to get into also maybe imposter syndrome a little bit, just briefly. It's something that I struggle with a lot. And
yes,
I think more specifically as actors, it's not like a musician, where it's like you have your concerts and you have so you can see how many people listen to your stuff and like your art. I go on a set, I do my job, and then I wait months for it to come out. And then I usually try my best not to hear what people have to say about it. So I'm always in the space where I'm like, I'm not a role model.
You're in your bubble. Yeah.
People don't care what I have to say. Like, me posting about this campaign is not going to cause an uproar. But to my surprise,
maybe it caused an uproar.
To my surprise, it did. And I had a moment where I was like, number one, absolutely shocked by how people were coming behind that post. But also, second of all, it's just like the negativity aspect of it, how low people stoop when you say something that they disagree with. And I am a person that, if you push my buttons a little too much, I'm gonna take it. That's just me. And like, as a human being, as Lexi,
right,
a public figure, I guess. And so I definitely had my moments where I was like, you know what? I have time today, so I'm gonna clap back, and I'm gonna go back and forth with you on this. Maybe sometimes that's not always the best, but also at the same time, I feel like people are very entitled to say and comment on people's lives and their own opinion.
Yeah.
You could just let people vibe. These people be. If you don't agree with them, you don't really have to comment. I know I sure don't. If I don't like something, I'm not going to engage with it. So maybe that's my advice to people. Like, also, then if you have an issue with people maybe pushing back on something or speaking their mind, maybe just don't engage with my content. It's that simple. Sadly, not everybody thinks that way. So at this stage, it's like, oh well.
I think that could be the podcast first piece of merch. Oh well, push the next generation. Oh well. I think it's really interesting that you say that, because I really struggle with this notion that, like, there's a level of ownership that comes from having a platform that people really like and I also have the imposter syndrome. Like I've told you all the time, like even before I was working in this business, like I came from a family of public figures. I was technically a public figure myself. And like, but also I think like being in California, there are so many public figures here. It's so easy to feel like, well, I'm not, for instance, I'm not Kylie Jenner. So I don't have that reach. Therefore, like no one's really paying attention to what I'm doing. Like there, it's so easy to get into that type of loop. And so then you're shocked and everyone's like, oh yeah, no, I follow you. I pay attention. Like
Yeah,
it's very weird. Like, oh, walking the street. You seen, that's strange. Like
right.
it
Yeah.
takes a minute. But like with that, I really struggle with this notion that people feel like we belong to them. And also like, if you're not going to say that to my face, maybe you shouldn't say it to me on the internet. Cause there's been a lot of crazy comments, particularly in this election season. And I look to like people like VP Harris, like outside of the fact that like everyone knows who I'm voting for at this point, that's not really a surprise. But like outside of those notions, like to see this woman be consistently degraded like over and over and still keep showing up on every day, doing her job as vice president, which like hasn't stopped, campaigning and just like not clapping back all day long. Like she claps back in her own way, but like I don't know how she does it. So like all that to say, like it kind of inspires me some days to keep going because I'm like, if she can sit there and take all of this, like maybe I can do it for her. Maybe I can do it for the people that I believe should have their rights, protected and all that good stuff. But it's a hard time. The internet, I think, is a really crazy place. And I wish that we would exercise being a little bit more kind to each other. But yeah, speaking of the internet, I feel like we're very much the internet generation. And so I'd love to know from you what you think are like the most hot topic political issues concerning Gen Z voters this election.
Mhm. Um, there's so many.
So many.
A lot of the things that are at stake affect us directly, affect generations, affect the world that our kids will live in. I think for me, the biggest thing that I always say is the fact that there are multiple spots on the Supreme Court that are available, and that if a certain someone gets elected, that he will put people in those positions of power that will be able to dictate and control what we do for at least the next 10.
Potentially our lifetimes, though, and in a very like people really underestimate the fact that like
they do.
When you're dealing with fascism, stuff
they
happens.
underestimate, I think, because everybody's so fixated on just also the election and the two. They're not looking at the bigger picture. Obviously, we've heard it. Reproductive rights is a big thing. I think that this conversation, me personally, I'm pro-choice. I understand being pro-life as well, but the issue is the fact that I feel like a lot of people are pro-birth rather than pro-life. And I think that when we have this conversation surrounding reproductive rights, I understand that not everybody is going to align with their values, especially when it comes to then if you add religion into it, that's a whole nother thing. But for me, it's more specific when we hear stories about young women, mothers, wives that are pregnant, but if they conceive the child, that they are putting their own life at risk, not only the child's life, but also their life. We've heard stories of women losing their lives while birth or because they didn't have access to be able to get an abortion. So for me, I think that specifically, I would love for everybody to look at reproductive rights, not just as I'm a young woman who, in their eyes, being reckless with my body and I don't want to have a child right now, because it's so much more than that. And I don't think that a lot of people are understanding of it. IVF, all those things. Gun control is a big thing as well. To me, the fact that we keep having the same issue over and over again in this country is disgusting. The fact that we witness so many mass school shootings, not even just school, but mass shootings in general, is disgusting. And this is coming from the same people that also consider themselves to be pro-life. So this is why it all goes hand in hand.
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance today in the political world.
Pro-life, if you also believe that it is okay for children to be able to have access to guns, for people to be reckless, parents to be reckless with where they put up their shotguns, all those things. Of course, climate change. I think that
the climate anxiety is so real.
The fact that it is like 80 degrees in October right now is not normal. And I really need
normal at all.
Wake up. It's not normal. It's not normal at all. I would really love for people to wake up. I think also accountability in the judicial system. justice system in general, more specifically in terms of holding cops accountable, holding people accountable that goes hand in hand with the Black Lives Matter. But yeah, no, I said it right. Holding cops accountable when
Yeah.
they attack innocent citizens. And there are a lot of things that I feel like just people aren't, there's so much more, but I just feel like people say these things without going into depth as to why
Yeah.
they're important topics to care about. Um, and I just suggest everybody to really, I mean, we're only 2 weeks away, so I don't
Oh
know how
my
much
gosh.
research you can do at this point, but to really do your research. And the biggest thing that I keep hearing is like it's a lesser of two evils, and I get that not everybody aligns with some of her views. Not everybody obviously aligns with Trump's views, but I just think at the end of the day, it's like voting for the kind of future that you want to live in, taking
Yeah.
out the things that don't necessarily matter. I think we keep hearing about build a wall, build a wall. We've been talking about that since 2016. So it's
Yeah.
like, what
And the
else?
wall hasn't been built, guys. Just so
It
you know,
hasn't been
it
built.
hasn't been built.
Well, that's the thing. Guess what? It's 2024. We've been saying this for quite some time now. So
Yeah.
I think it's just really doing the research and voting for the issues that are affecting your day-to-day communities, affecting your children, your sisters, your brothers, and really educating yourself rather than also just listening to what other people are telling you. Doing your own proper research, which there's a lack of that.
Yeah, because I always call it like Twitter intellect, and I'm like, guys, we have got to check our sources. We have got to like read a good citation, make sure that we know. Like, it's really not that hard to be like, you know what, I'm gonna fact check. Maybe no one else is fact checking for me, but like, I don't have to like take on this whole ideology because someone tweeted it and it sounded nice. Like, maybe this person's account, if you read it, was quite biased and like didn't actually support what you were intending to support. Like, we have to do our research, especially in this generation where we're on our phones all day long. So
24/7.
like literally 24/7. And I guess for me, like, I'd love to know from you, like, how can traditional political institutions better connect with and engage young voters? Because I think oftentimes as members of Gen Z, we're often like just left out of the conversation, or we're told that, you know, we want too much, we're too progressive, we're too this, like we're not enough to be in the room. But it's precisely, I think, when we're in the room that like you get to see the wide breadth of what we want. Like 41 million members of our generation being eligible to vote, like that's huge. I can't even fathom like being in a space where there's 41 million. Like it's ginormous, and so like not being able to be a part of the conversation in all the ways I think is really harmful to the future of our nation. And I think that there's one candidate who's really open to hearing from us. But I would just love to know from you how you think that these political institutions and the traditional legacy media even can connect better with us.
I feel like there has been 100% a big push to try to meet Gen Z where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly, the issue is our generation. I think that our generation,
Mm.
we aren't as prone to listen. We're a very progressive generation that wants things our way, that wants to live in like a perfect world where everything that we all align with can coexist. And
Mm-hmm.
while I wish that could be the case, because I stand with Gen Z in terms of a lot of issues that they've been having in terms of this upcoming election as well. With that being said, I think we also have to do yet again our research because our generation isn't watching CNN. They're not watching MSNBC. They're sometimes getting their news from TikTok, but even then it's a little in and out.
Yeah.
I think it's really more on us. It's more on our generation to be more open to listening, more open to actually educating ourselves on how these systems work, rather than making judgment based off of the posts that we see on Twitter or the posts that we see on TikTok. Like, you know, that the I'm like, I don't want to call it a lie, but it is also a lie. Just about, you know, like Kamala, like locking up a bunch of innocent Black men on
Very much a lie.
lie. That's a lie. But y'all are getting that. Y'all got that news from uh Shoddy 101 on Twitter. Like, you know, it's like that. Like
Not Shoddy 101.
it's like there's so much misinformation out there, and I just think that it's really on us that isn't as like prone or more open to educating ourselves and also meeting people where they're trying to meet us.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really interesting because like on the deeply political side of things, like speaking to certain congressional members, like there's some who like have people who are members of Gen Z in their office, like Congresswoman Kamala Dove, and then there's like others who like don't want to hear from us at all. And so like I think it's both and, right? Like there's definitely like we're not looking at the spaces also, which is why I created this podcast, because I was like, maybe if you're not watching legacy news, you'll listen to this. It won't be long. You can learn a little something. Like I'll try to be a trusted voice. I don't even really want to be considered just like a liberal. Like I want to be non-biased in my approach of delivering information, but obviously y'all are going to know, I think, also what I believe. I don't think it's that hard to guess where I'm at, but like finding space for like, I think it's like they have to meet us in the middle where we are, which is allowing us into the conversation, and then also our part to like be open to the conversation too. And in knowing how these systems work, like you would know, like it's not all going to happen overnight. Yeah, you might be a single issue voter in this particular fashion, but like not voting at all or voting against the rest of your interests for said single issue is actually not helping you and is derailing you in ways that like maybe we should just like, you know, look and see like what's actually happening here. And so I feel like to your point, I think it really is about us being open and doing our own research, and elder generations being able to look at us as the adults that we actually are now. I mean, not our whole generation, but the ones who are adults, and like invite us to the conversation. Like there should be seats at your table for us always, because we are a large demographic, and like us just being 41 million members eligible to vote, that's not even the whole generation. Like there's so many more of us, and like we're here, we're showing up, we're in Congress now. Shout out to Maxwell. Like we're literally in Congress. Like, yeah. So all the things there that I'm going to go off my soapbox again. But speaking of Maxwell Frost, Congressman Maxwell Frost, who we adore, the first Gen Z member of Congress, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on his efforts to secure federal grants for the arts. He kind of has been giving an overview in a few spaces now about this notion that like there's lots of other countries who have literal, like it's federally regulated funds for artists to be able to make livings, to be able to pour back into their communities, to be able to pour back into the government that's supporting them. And in America, we have none of that. And yet we're like literally like culture cultivators. So how do you feel about his championing of this, I presume will be a bill if it's not already, and this initiative? And I mean, even looking at him with the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, like when we show up, we show up. So I would just love to know your thoughts on where he is in terms of his legislation and how that aligns with our vibes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely love the work that Maxwell is doing. I stand by everything that he's pushing, specifically also when it comes to the arts and gun control. I think that it is important and so lovely that he is shedding light on these things. And I think it's even more important hearing it from someone who is a part of our generation, for them to hear it, but also for our generation to hear it as well.
Mm-hmm.
To get more involved and more, well, number one, for the people maybe that aren't as involved, but motivating them to know that they're not too young to get involved. And then also motivating Gen Zers that may feel like, I want to do this, I want to speak up, but I don't know my place, I don't know how to go about it. Like he's just great representation for that. And I stand by like everything that Maxwell pushes out there, because number one, he's just a genius and a very kind and empathetic person.
Very much so, yeah.
Everything that he's doing, it's for a good reason and it's coming from a good place. But also it's just that representation aspect of it that really makes my heart happy that our generation has right now, where they feel motivated to also use their voice just like he is.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. Like I think of other people like Tennessee State Rep Justin Jones. Shout out to you, Justin. Hope you're listening right now. Even though you're trying to save the world at the same time and dealing with some really crazy racist situations happening in your state. Thoughts and prayers. But I think like it's interesting seeing this push, and I even know my brain is blanking on his name right now, but he has a super PAC, March for Our Lives. It's going to come to me as soon as we're done. From David, yes, thank you. Woo. David Hogg, and like developing a super PAC to push Gen Z political candidates, I think is like the best idea that we've seen in a political space in a long time. Like we deserve to literally be at the table. And again, if you're not going to invite us, we're just going to show up. And so I think it's really nice to see what can happen out of initiatives and this drive for all of us to be like, we're here, we're not going anywhere. Our voices do matter. And it's really the progress that occurs when politicians actually listen to us is actually mind blowing. It's mind blowing. We get Kamala HQ out of people listening to us and inviting us to the table like we're the adults that we are. And I just say that again because I also feel like growing up in Black homes, we're never seen as adults until we have our own children. So it's like I'm like, please, guys, I am an adult. I am eligible to vote. My voice matters. All the things.
Yep. All the things.
All of the things. Well, to pivot a little bit, I guess back to content creation. Actually, hold up. Okay, so I'd love to know from you, two-parter, but you can answer as a collective. What inspired you to become really politically engaged in the first place? Because some people really do enter our industry and they're just like, I like the arts, that's it, I'm done. And then how you went through the process of starting your platform, We the Voices of Gen Z, and what that means to you, and all the things there.
So I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I have always been engaged or tapped in as to what's been going on in our world. I remember when I was in first grade, Michelle Obama coming into my classroom and like reading to my class. Like just being in the political field was like a very like normal thing. When so duration, all of those things. So I've been like very in that world naturally just by where I'm from.
Right.
With that being said, as I got older, of course, I started feeling more motivated to educate myself on and speak up about things that maybe I wasn't tapped in with fully. And I have people like Yara Shahidi and Amanda Stenberg to thank, because I remember when they were coming out and, you know, being in Teen Vogue and all that stuff and just kind of speaking on the importance of understanding and finding your voice in the midst of these political spaces as well. So I was like 13 when I went to my first ever Women's March. I went to March for Our Lives as well. I just have always kind of been naturally drawn to using my voice and speaking up. When the pandemic happened during the Black Lives Matter march, shortly after, sadly, Breonna Taylor and George Floyd had lost their lives, I remember like being thrown up at a rally in downtown LA in front of like thousands of people, and it was my first time speaking in front of at least like that many people about something acting. And I was so nervous, but I am so glad that I did it, because I feel like that moment really solidified the confidence that I had in what I had to say, instead of obviously showing up to the marches and all that stuff was cool, but I wasn't really doing it on social media. I wasn't, you know, creating those spaces. And so, yeah, ever since then, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to speak up about things that I'm passionate about. And then it also kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about humanity. Like, it's also just a natural thing where I feel like, how dare I not? If there are people, even if you have a platform like where 10 people are following and watching, you can still touch at least 5 of those 10 people. Your work will resonate with someone. More specifically, when you're talking about how I started to be the Voices of Gen Z, I started that around the time of there was the white supremacy march that happened at UVA. And I remember I was visiting home at that time. I had always like microaggressions. That wasn't, you know, a thing that really shocked me, but I think it was my first time really just seeing a pure sense of hatred for my people and for people that looked like me. That was also so close to home. Like the fact my dad went to UVA. So like, you know, I was a bit shell shocked. I was 14 at the time, 14 turning 15. And it was all happening around that time. And I remember my parents had asked me what I wanted to do for my birthday. And number one, I was like, well, I want to open up my own production company. And then with that being said, I want to do a documentary, which, you know, then I didn't know the name of it, but a documentary that was a roundtable discussion full of diverse Generation Z voices talking about social and political issues. Just the way in which I would open Teen Vogue and I would see people of Gen Z that were speaking up about things that I was passionate about, and how that made me feel motivated. I wanted to continue to kind of create that space and do that for other Gen Zers. So I did that. We did that in 2018, picked it back up, and during the pandemic, low-key thinking about picking it back up
I was literally sitting here. We're in the middle of a podcast, and I'm like, so after we get off the call, we're gonna
Right,
talk,
so
and we're
we're
gonna
gonna talk
partner.
because it really
Prodco meet Prodco, and we should do it.
yes,
Great.
we should do it because honestly,
Yeah.
but it really was number one for me and some of the other Gen Zers that I would have on the call. It was such a nice outlet to be able to just kind of like be like, hey, this is all
Right.
freaking weird, but we have one another. And then
Mhm.
also by having, I would have mental health experts or even experts about the topics that we were talking about a part of our calls as well. That would number one, just kind of like check in on everybody to make
Yeah.
sure that everybody is okay after these heavy conversations. But also, if there was any facts that we didn't check, the fact that there was
Mhm.
somebody also there to be able to help educate us and educate our viewers as well for their more on the topics that we were talking about. All in all, it's
Yeah.
just a really needed space, especially during those times. Um, so yeah, I feel very grateful of the fact that I was able to do so. And I'm grateful of everybody that joined those conversations. And hopefully soon, I think we may have to
Yeah.
that
I'm
back
like, and
because
just like that, you heard it here first.
just
It's
like
coming
that,
back.
it's gonna
I was like, this is just for the listening ear and the audience. This is
right,
kind of how Lexi and I do business together. We
right.
just have an idea and we go, okay, now we're gonna do it. It's gonna
And
get
so we should
done.
do it.
Over. Love that for us. I think it's really impactful and important though about what you've said in terms of like there's the twofold, right? Like starting a Prodco as a teenager, what amazing. This is why I'm obsessed with you, one of the many reasons, but like to see that there is such a crossover between politics and entertainment even at that age. Like what we look at right now, like even it's kind of funny little tidbit, my mom I thought I told her what this podcast was about. All of a sudden she's like, oh, why are you having so and so on? Isn't this a podcast about entertainment? And I was like, no mom, it's actually a podcast about politics. But I realized that it kind of it's all intertwined, right? Like you have congressional members who are dictating what happens to the arts, and like down to like who gets rebates and who gets to shoot where. Like we're so intertwined in terms of that part of it, but also representation directly impacts, like we talk about how Carrie's character like is very much responsible for the public perception and appreciation of Vice President Kamala Harris being able to exist in that sphere. And so like seeing how you're able to be like, you know what, I'm going to bring this to the table. And it's political, it's also entertainment, it's all of the things, and like seeing how those two things like, kind of bounce off of each other, and the work that we all need to be doing, I think is just so powerful and special. And all of the good things, come out of it. So love that for us, and I wish that there were more people like, honestly, side note, the people on the campaign trail right now, like, and I would say on all sides. I may feel ways about other sides, but like when you look at different surrogates, like they're not always just politicians. They're absolutely people in entertainment, because like our works really do kind of overlap and align, and our audiences are often the same. And like if you're watching TV and you're watching a debate, you're also probably watching whatever broadcast show is on, or you have a subscription to a streamer. So like we're serving many audiences. And back to you having your responsibility part about like your platform, and like knowing that like, yeah, the people who are watching that are also probably watching the CNN town hall. Like it's all a part of the conversation for sure.
100% agree.
So many vibes. Love this for us. Okay, we're gonna keep going before we wrap up. I think actually let's touch on this. Fun times ahead. So I would love to know a success story from you about how your content, whether it be your entertainment content, or your social media content or activism, has motivated a young person to become more politically engaged. And it doesn't have to be a literal person per se, but like just where you've seen like, wow, my work is it's really getting out there in a meaningful way.
Yeah. There have been a couple of instances. I went to Savannah State, and I was there for like their like one of their tailgate for their one of their opening games, and just talking to a bunch of young people, um, educating them a little bit more. Where they're like, "Oh, I didn't know if I was gonna vote before, but after talking to you, I'm gonna vote." Or just some of the things that I've posted
Mhm.
on TikTok or on Instagram that made people feel seen and heard, and that motivated other Gen Zers to like want to vote. I'm trying to think of like one like real instance. I think it's just whenever
It's
I
an amalgamation of things. Yeah.
moment, it's just, people receive what I have to say, and I feel grateful for that. But yeah, I don't yeah, I hope
that totally answers the question.
yeah, like whenever I put something out there, I'm always just hoping that it's going to resonate with someone
Yeah.
for a greater good. And so if it does that, if somebody comments how much they loved the video and how much they learned from it, great, I did my job.
That is so amazing. And I think like in a world where when we look at the balance between like our content and like sometimes the negative responses we get versus the positive ones, I think it's always even just important to like sit there and think like who did I impact that was positive? Because like once you get like 15 or 20 hate messages in an hour, you kind of not feeling too good, guys. I just want you to know sometimes sometimes it doesn't feel really great. But like it may take a little bit of effort to like sit and be like, you know what? Maybe that still was meaningful. Maybe I did change one person's mind, or maybe I helped that one person feel seen. So to that point, speaking of mental health, we are both young women in our 20s. And so I'd love to know how you process navigating global issues, self-care, your career, activism, like living through very unprecedented times over and over and over again. How do you, as a young Black woman today, hold it all?
It's a great question, Ashley, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I think for me, it's just having grace with myself. Um,
Mhm.
I yeah, it's easier said than done. I don't have a full formula that I've like fully nailed yet. There are days where I don't feel like getting up out of bed. There are days where I don't feel like moving my body, going to the gym. And there are days where also sometimes I don't feel like lending my voice to certain
Yeah.
there are times where I just don't feel like showing up. Um, and that's okay. And I think that in a society right now, especially with the new age of social media, TikTok, all those things, where there's always this pressure to like live this perfect life and to have, you know, your winter arc or your hot girl summer, all these things where sometimes it's not realistic. And that's okay. And
Yeah.
a big thing that I have to do in those moments is sometimes get off of social media, is pour into myself, do things that make me happy, even if that's just sitting on the couch all day and watching TV. You know what? If that is what's going to keep me sane, then
So be it. Yeah.
so be it. But yeah, it's really just finding grace with myself, being more kinder to myself and my body. I'm not always going to get it right. I am someone who loves control more specifically. And so I think that that's something that I also tend to struggle with a lot, where it's like, I have this vision for how I want myself to be or how I want my future to look like.
Mhm.
And that it doesn't go that way, I start to kind of not spiral, but it's like, oh God, like, am I doing okay with my life? Am I throwing
Yeah.
everything away? Like, you know, so I think it's just, yeah, giving myself space and the grace to just sometimes not be okay and to not always be perfect and to not have everything figured out. Cause I'm 21. Like I'm well into,
Yeah.
I'm like, I got some years to go. So honestly, I'm like, I just let me take it day by day, be as kind to myself as possible, and give myself grace.
I feel like that's a message that we really all need to hear, especially as a generation who is just inundated with so many like expectations on us on social media. Like it's like down to what body type. Like there's a video I love where this girl is like, if we could all just like be ugly for one day, then the beauty standards would change. Like please.
Love that so much.
And so it's like this whole notion that like these are expectations that we're all grappling with. Yeah, you might be concerned about who's going to win the presidency, which is like a valid concern, or might be really concerned about down ballot voting, which I recommend you all do. But like also sometimes like you're just like you're feeling like a girl and you just are like tired of like having to like put on makeup today or like go do the thing or your body type isn't the right body. Like so trying to hold all those things. And I think Lexi, to your point, giving yourself grace and the space to just like also know that like maybe today's not it. Maybe I don't post anything today. Maybe I don't have to deal with the urgency culture in that way where like because the world's gonna keep moving, guys. Like, I promise you.
Gonna keep
The
moving.
world's gonna keep
Life is
moving.
happening, and so
Yeah.
the thing that you can just do is kind of breathe, try to adapt, reboot, reset when you need it, but just vibe, just vibe, just vibe.
This is the second podcast shirt we've got. We've got oh well and just
Just vibe, just
I
vibe.
think these are some of the most Gen Z coded It's like just 5, guys, and that's it. Well, I have 2 more quick questions from me, and then I'm gonna let another member of Gen Z ask you a question. But so I guess first of the final is what are some common misconceptions about Gen Z's political interest or involvement that you've encountered and like to clarify?
Yeah. I mean, I just think that it's like we don't care. Like we're not as tapped in as people think that we are. It's to your point. We are adults now. I'm like Gen Z, we're adults. We are very much so tapped in. We are very much so educated.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes it may not come off that way, but please understand that we do also know what we're talking about. More specifically, I think even when it comes to social media, there are so many negative sides of it, but there are also so many positive sides of it as well. Um, People using content and using these platforms, regardless of what we may think of it, it actually does sometimes more good than harm. There
Yeah.
are people out there that are using their platforms and spreading the word about things that are happening socially and politically. And we are tapped in, maybe not, as much as some people think that we are, but people are tapped in. And there's so many incredible Gen Z leaders that are out there leading these movements that
Mhm.
are letting their voices. To your point, Maxwell, David, Hogg,
Mhm.
because there's just
I
so
mean, the
many.
list goes on and on. Malala, like,
There's just the list goes
yeah,
on and on. Mari Copney. There's just so many young people out here that are doing the work and doing the job, and it's just now on y'all to finally take them seriously and to start listening to what they have to say, because it's just as important than what other generations have to say as well. So, yeah.
listen, mic drop on that. And I guess the last one for me would have to be if you look to the future, we'll put presidential elections aside because frankly this might come out after the election, and that will be a whole different conversation, but like
So,
putting that aside, like what do you as a member of Gen Z wish to see in your future, both politically, entertainment, like where, if you could have it your way, we're at Mickey D's, Lexi gets to order the perfect world for all of us to coexist in as a member of Gen Z, what do you want to see? It could be one thing, it can be several, whatever feels most organic to you.
I mean, I just think we all need to get back to that sense of like love and community, and empathy and humanity for one another. I think that in terms of like this world is, it's a lot going on, and
Hmm.
we lack empathy for one another. I think that there's
Yeah.
just, yeah, I feel like I'm trying to make it deep, but I think it's that
That feels deep
simple.
right there, sis.
I'm
Like
like,
it
oh
really
my
does.
gosh, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, it's just
No.
that simple. Like we all need to get back to this place. I don't know. Well, I don't even know if it's ever been
Like
that.
y'all was like back to.
I'm like it's never been that. Like we're all human beings. I think that
Yeah.
racism in 2024 is absolutely, sorry, I'm gonna cuss a little bit. It's fucking insane, in my opinion.
Yeah.
To look down on people for who they love or based off of the color of their skin or how much money they make, where they live,
Yeah.
all of it. It's just, it's gross. Honestly, it's gross. And we're all human. We're all trying our best. And I think that we just need to get to that place where we can all, you may not agree with what everybody does, but there's just no need for so much hatred and violence against one another. And I think we're seeing it so much with this upcoming election where it's like, I'm also like, just bring back real Republicans. Like, whatever happened to
Bring
people?
them back.
Bring them
Bring back the conservatives that I didn't feel like were gonna kill me if I was walking down the street. Like
saying, like, it's okay to disagree.
I'm like now the policies might be a little questionable at times, but like also there are scales, right? Like when you have a leader of a party saying, "Yeah, I want the same generals Hitler had," and no one bats an eye. I think we need to have a conversation because
It's just,
I feel like because that is it. But like honestly, to your point, the love and empathy thing I think is really a beautiful thing to want out of this world. And like I think that there's so many members of our generation who want that. And so I really hope that this can become a community where we cultivate that together because it's so important and valuable. And like, yeah, also down with fascism. But anyways, we're gonna ask we're gonna ask a question now. I think, are we able to pull it up, Brian? The question from our fellow Gen Zer.
Hi Lexi, I'm Gabby. I'm a high school junior from Connecticut, and I wanted to know how did you get inspired to write your book Louder Than Words? I love you and I love your work.
the cutest. Hey, Gabby.
He's so cute. I was like, oh my gosh.
Okay, so how I got inspired to write Louder Than Words. Growing up, I was a huge bookworm. I love reading. For me personally, it was always kind of an escape. I even now as an actor, I've written little things here and there. I have so many ideas. As an artist, my brain is kind of going miles a minute with new ideas almost every day. And so when an opportunity presented itself back in 2020, I believe, because this has been in the works for a little bit now. So 2020, when the opportunity presented itself, I already kind of had a little bit of a concept where it seemed pretty simple in my eyes. I just want a coming of age story of a young woman, or specifically a young Black girl, that has stumbled a few times but gets up. She makes mistakes. She has been through traumatic situations, yes, but it's not the entirety of her story. Someone who is searching this idea of perfectionism, but really truly understands that it doesn't exist. Because these are all things that I battled with in high school and even now as a 20-something-year-old, where it's like, I think that when things happen to us, it's so easy to feel ashamed or to feel like we have to do a complete reset. And sometimes people need that, but also just understanding that what happened to you or what you've been through is not the entirety of your story. It's just only making you stronger. It's making you the person that you are today. Whatever happened to you, you didn't deserve it. But at the same time, don't beat yourself up or run from it. And that was lessons that I had to learn. And so I put all of that, those deep things, but also just into a book where you also just get to see a bunch of high school kids, more specifically young kids of color, LGBTQ teens that just exist in this day and age without any other BS, unnecessary BS happening. And then on top of that, it's also set in DC based off of, just kind of like the neighborhood that I grew up in, which I never saw represented when I was growing up. So I wanted to do that. Shout out to all my Northeast girls in DC. I wanted to do that for us as well. So it was a long journey, but very grateful to have been given the opportunity to be able to tell my story and to kind of be create Jordan, who's now a form of representation for other young girls out there, which is really beautiful.
That is just so powerful, and what a magnificent way to round us out, because you're practicing as you preach, man. Like you're showing up, you're representing us in many facets, not even just TV and film, like you're showing us in books. And so it's just so powerful, because I think people think of Gen Z, they don't think of people like us who are like, no, I want to engage, and you're engaging in all the different ways. And so I thank you for being a light in a vessel for our generation, and just in general, Lux is just a cool girl, guys. I feel like you've got it here. You can see it on her page, but
Look who's
she's just a cool girly. So thank you so much for joining us on Push the Next Generation. And I hope you come back. We can probably talk on FaceTime later today.
Right.
But we'll do another call for you guys very soon.
Yeah. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me, girl.
Oh, thank you, girly. Things we love to see? It. If you want to submit a question to our guest, DM at Push the Next Generation Pod for a chance to make it onto future episodes. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Push the Next Generation, recommend it to a friend, follow on socials at Push the Next Generation Pod. And thank you so much for watching and listening. See you next week on Push the Next Generation. In the meantime, be kind to yourselves. This is Ashley Jackson, signing off.